Welcome back to the technical area. This is the review show. Sorry about last week, guys. We couldn't get a preview show out. There were some difficulties, but should be back in action this week with a review show and a preview show. A lot of things to talk about, and a lot of things to talk about last week. Some really good games going on. So let's talk about that. Let's review that and get into a little bit of what happened in match week 6, I believe it is. And how things went down. So without further ado, here's Around the Premier League in 180 seconds. We start the weekend off at Southampton, where the Saints took on Bournemouth. Southampton led in almost every statistical category, everyone except goals. 3 shots on target led to 3 goals for Bournemouth as they took this one 3-1. Over to Leicester, where the Foxes hosted Spurs. Harry Kane got Tottenham on the board first in the 29th, and it looked like they were about to go ahead by 2, but a very, very close call overturned by VAR took away the goal, and Leicester pounced. 2 goals in the final 30 minutes gave the Foxes the 2-1 win at home. Burnley took on Norwich at home this weekend. The Canaries seem to have a little bit of a hangover from their upset win over City last week. 2 goals by Chris Wood in the first 15 minutes helped Burnley cruise to a 2-0 victory. Now to Goodison Park, where Everton played host to Sheffield United. This was the rare case of more goals than shots on goal for one team. An own goal by Yerry Mina, along with an insurance goal in the 79th, gave Sheffield United the 2-1 win on the road. Watford traveled to Manchester to take on City. There were a lot of goals in this one, all from City. The defending champs scored 5 goals in 18 minutes, setting a new record on their way to an 8-0 win at home. And from tons of goals to no goals, Brighton traveled to Newcastle, and while there were tons of shots, none went in, as this one ended in a scoreless draw. On to Sunday, where all 4 games took place in London. The first one, West Ham taking on Man United. A goal by Yarmolenko in the 44th and another by Aaron Cresswell in the 84th gave West Ham the 2-0 win as United dropped points for the 4th time in the last 5 games. Over to Selhurst Park, where Crystal Palace hosted Wolves. A Leander Dendoncker own goal got Palace on the board first. A red card in the 73rd for Wolves gave Palace the significant advantage, and just when you thought the game was over, bang! Diogo Jota finds himself in the right spot at the right time as Wolves grab a point at the death, 1-1. Now to the Emirates as Arsenal took on Aston Villa. The Clarets got off to a good start with a 20th minute goal by John McGinn, putting them up 1-0. Arsenal would face another problem in the 41st. A red card for Maitland-Niles forced them to go down to 10 men, down 1. A goal apiece would make it 2-1, and it would remain that way until the 81st, when things started to change dramatically. Callum Chambers would tie things up in the 81st. Aubameyang would win it in the 84th as Villa let one slip away on the road. Arsenal win 3-2. Finally, we head to Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea hosted Liverpool. All you need to know about this one is that Liverpool continued to roll. Trent Arnold-Alexander and Salah get on the score sheet as Liverpool remained perfect, 2-1. All right, well, there you have it. That is your recap of match week 6. A pretty good one all around. Lots of goals in some areas. And, of course, in the Brighton-Newcastle game, no goals at all. But really good stuff all around for another week. Some big wins for some teams, some crazy finishes. Which is just what you like here in the Premier League. And, a lot to talk about. And I think that to get a little bit into that, obviously, as you guys know, every week we're not going to be able to dive deeply into every game or every team. But that's why we have these segments. The Champions League bound teams of the week. Again, these are teams that performed really well, overperformed, and whatnot, or faced a tough opponent and won. All that type of things. Teams not necessarily that are headed to the Champions League, but teams that performed really, really well this week. So, first off, we're going to just get it out of the way because they're on this every week because they're perfect so far this season. Liverpool. Another great game by them. A tough opponent at Chelsea. They had to go to Stamford Bridge, get the win. Granted, Chelsea has had their ups and downs this season, but it's still a matchup between 2 solid teams, and Liverpool jumped out, got the 2-0 lead early, and really didn't let Chelsea back in the game. Chelsea obviously had the goal in the 71st, I believe it was, by N'Golo Kante. But other than that, not much for them. A goal overturned in this game, which probably could have changed the game overall. But it was a it was another Liverpool performance as we've seen all year this year, just consistent week in week out, playing really well and doing a good job, and just beating their opponents you know badly week in and week out, and just kind of beating them off the jump and getting ahead early and not letting go. So another good job by Liverpool, and another appearance on the Champions League bound teams of the week. Next, we have West Ham. West Ham's been playing really, really well lately. This week they got a 2-0 win over Man United. They've had a couple really good wins recently. They've looked really good, and the midfield is starting to shape together. Obviously, Sebastian Aller up top has helped. They got a couple goals this week from Yarmolenko and Aaron Cresswell. And then, granted, again, it's again the same thing with Chelsea as with Man United. Man United's had their struggles this season, but West Ham is a team that, probably should be losing to them, or at least, they definitely should probably at least given up a goal, based on paper, and that's why we don't play the game on paper. But Man United, a tough performance for them. We won't talk about them too much this week. I don't have them in my relegation-worthy teams of the week or teams that performed poorly this week, so we'll talk about them a little bit more. They've had their troubles. Their troubles continue. They have a lot to look at, a lot to figure out. But West Ham played really well, stayed composed, 1-0 for a long time there, but eventually get the insurance goal in the 84th minute, and off they went with all 3 points, against Manchester United. The next team is Burnley, another team that sports the maroon and blue, if that's how you want to classify it. Burnley had a 2-0 win against the Norwich team that came off of a loss to Man City, a win against Man City, which, as we all know, was an extremely big win, an upset win, and they were on this section of the show last week. But this week, Burnley came out and they took advantage of, Norwich, probably a little bit of a hangover, as I mentioned, from their game against Man City. And they came out, scored 2 goals in the first 15 minutes and took advantage of that and held that lead all the way through. A good performance by Burnley. We know Norwich is good. I mean, if they weren't good, they wouldn't have beaten Man City, who's a very, very talented team, and grabbed a couple other wins across along the way. So a really good job by Burnley to come out, do their job, do a really good job of just kind of, not letting Norwich get their attack going and not let Norwich get into their defense. Burnley's defense is very good. They've done, let me just check real quick here. If I'm not wrong, they haven't given up too many goals this year. There it is. So yeah, they've given up 1, 2, 3. They've given up 7 goals in their last 5 games, so not great. Obviously, one of those is a loss 3-0 to Liverpool, so that kind of tips the scales a little bit. But Burnley did a really good job of managing Norwich and getting the win, so that's why they find themselves here, Champions League bound teams of the week. And then finally, Man City bouncing back after that Norwich loss, and getting an 8-0 win. There's, whenever you beat somebody 8-0, no matter what league you're playing in, where you're playing, that's a good win. You deserve to be as a Champions League bound team of the week. City just absolutely took it to Watford, who's had a terrible start of things. Granted, being without Deeney hurts for them, but they haven't been able to get anything going. An 8-0 loss, and City coming out and showing us that that loss last week was just a fluke, and they'll be up there with the best teams this year, week in and week out. So there you have it, your 4 Champions League bound teams of the week, or teams that performed really well this week: Liverpool, West Ham, Burnley, and Man City. Great job by all those teams. And unfortunately, when you talk about the good, you have to talk about the bad. And I mentioned it before, but the relegation-worthy teams of the week, teams who performed poorly this week, did not perform up to par, played bad against teams they should have beaten, stuff like that. Not necessarily teams that will be relegated, but teams that just did not play well this week. And it pains me every single week. It's the same thing, and if you can see right there, the Everton flag. Every week they're on this list because they performed poorly every single week for the past 3-4 weeks. I think it's been. They had the win against Wolves, which was a good one, maybe 3 weeks back, but other than that, another loss to a team that was newly promoted in Sheffield United. And granted, Sheffield United has been very good. The defense has been very good, but you gave up 2 shots, only one of them on goal, and somehow you still lost the game 2-0. Terrible performance. At home, they were good. In their 2 games at home this year so far, before this, they had 2 wins. A lot more is expected of this Everton team, and granted, they have a lot of new additions. They're trying to figure them out, fit them in. They've lost a couple players, a key player in Idrissa Gana Gueye, who kind of that loss forced them to change things up a bit. But another bad loss. And really, there's not much else to say about it. Inability to finish has been the story of Everton for the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. And it showed again. It showed again in this one, and a 2-0 loss, and that's why they're on relegation-worthy teams of the week. Moving forward, Arsenal is the next team on relegation-worthy teams of the week, and I'm putting them on here. They did get a win this week, but I'm putting them on there because they really should not have gotten a win this week. Gave up a goal early to Aston Villa at home. Went down 1-0. We're down 1-0 for the longest time. Got a red card. Managed to get back in it. Got a penalty that Nicolas Pepe converted. Tied it at 1, but a minute later gave up another goal. And if it wasn't for a complete breakdown by Aston Villa in the final 10 minutes, they would have ended up with a loss at home to a newly promoted side, just like Everton did. That's why they find themselves here on the relegation-worthy teams of the week. Not good enough from them. If they want to be up there in the top 4, the top 6 teams, granted, nobody's playing well right now except for Liverpool, really, and Man City for the most part. But if they want to be up there in that top 4, top 6, they got to be better against teams like this at home. So that's why they're on the relegation-worthy teams of the week. And then finally, Wolves. Wolves has had a terrible run of games recently. Really just all season. Only managing, I believe, 3 or 4 points. I'm not sure they've registered a win yet this season. They're 19th place in the table. They have not registered a win yet this season. A bunch of draws. Not good for them. A team that had so much promise last season and more promise, even more promise coming into this season. A good couple matches to start the season off against Leicester and Man United, getting 2 draws. But since then, it's been kind of flat. They find themselves down near the bottom of the table. A Crystal Palace team on the road, granted, but Crystal Palace team that they should have beaten. Gave up an own goal, had a red card and needed a 95th minute winner to just grab a point out of this one. If Wolves want any shot of being anywhere near Europa League again, and maybe that's wearing on them, having to play in all these competitions, but if they want to have any shot of being in Europa League again next year, they got to pick it up. 19th place. They got a game this week against Watford, which we'll preview on the preview show. That will obviously, they're going to need a win there to get things off and going. But another bad performance by them, I think, in a draw in a game, which, granted, another team that got a point probably shouldn't have gotten a point if it wasn't for that 95th minute winner. So there you have it. That's your relegation-worthy teams of the week. You have Everton, Arsenal, and Wolves all there. Real quick, before we end things, as we always do, the game of the week. A lot of good ones here. Obviously, the Wolves Crystal Palace one could have been on this list with the 95th minute winner, but I think I'm going back to Arsenal Aston Villa. I think that one had all the excitement. Had Aston Villa going up 1-0 early. It had a red card in the first half, and then in the second half, it had 4 goals. So really good ending. 2 goals in the last 10 minutes. That's why I have them as my game of the week. I thought that one was the most exciting. Arsenal looking like they were done, and then coming back full force with 2 goals in the final 10 minutes there, and getting the win at home, which as I mentioned, not great for them as a full performance, but good for them getting all 3 points and just a really good game overall. And that's why I have that as my game of the week. All right, there you guys have it. That is the recap of match week 6. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Hopefully you guys got a little bit of an idea of what's going on in the Premier League and how things are shaping up here 6 weeks in. I hope you guys have a little bit more to talk about at the water cooler if Premier League ever comes up, and I hope you guys keep following. The Technical Area preview show will be released on Friday for match week 7, so stay tuned for that. But until then, we'll talk to you guys later. Peace.